At the end of the last century, there was a Japanese person who was exposed to nuclear radiation. He endured 83 days of hell, looking at my own body, melted into a puddle of mud. And here's what's even scarier. The Japanese man pleaded numerous times to stop the treatment. Give yourself a treat. But it was forcibly renewed by the Japanese as a precious medicine, tormented day after day. In the end, there are no more humanoids. And it is the heard about Japanese Tokai village and the critical accident. September 30th, 1999 morning, Tokai village, northeast of Tokyo, started a day's work in this small town. There's also a nuclear fuel processing plant. In the processing plant, Uchiju and his 2 colleagues, we have already started to prepare the boat for the swim. According to the normal work process, Uchiju and others should use powder for trioxide first, pour into a special dissolving tower, waiting for the nitrate solution in the column. Dissolve the powder completely. The solution is then piped into the storage tower. After concentration mixing, to obtain the final product, oleal nitrate, but maybe to leave work early, or not trained at all. These daring workers actually decided. Skip the long pipeline transportation process, filled directly with a nitrate solution of 235, use simple stainless steel drums and funnels to process. And that's exactly what's happening here. Less than half an hour later, the fire broke out. And so the trio began on their own initiative. Extremely dangerous workflow. The big innkeeper supports the funnel with his hands. Just stand by the sedimentation tank. Have a co-worker continuously pour the solution into the tank. One worker left, sitting idle not far away. Behind the desk, the 3 are extremely relaxed. It is not at all as rigorous as nuclear-related work should be. I would like to talk and laugh while working. Not at all. Aware of dangerous proximity. The moment the 7th bucket of solution enters the tank, it didn't happen. An extremely dazzling orchid light suddenly burst out of the robe, completely overshadowed the working trio. As for the gamma radiation detector on the roof, sound a shrill alarm, distance from that blue light. Just over 60 centimeters of big guilt. The brain hasn't reacted yet. There has been an abnormality in the body. He started throwing up. The trio's first reaction was to run away, but Wanakumi took a few steps. He fell to the ground with a plop. The employee responsible for pumping the solution into the tank fell into a coma as soon as I got to the locker room. The employee sitting behind the desk is in stable condition, but he was also taken to the hospital for rescue. Although the situation at the time of the accident was a bit strange, terrifying, but 3 people, including Uchiju, all seem extremely optimistic. Think nothing big will happen at all. Waneo even believes that. You can leave the hospital at night and go home for dinner. But he was essentially dead. Even the best medicine in the world, experts come together with state-of-the-art medical apparatus, can't save his life. Because of that faint blue light, there is intense nuclear radiation in it. Once hit, then you must die. How terrifying is nuclear radiation? He won't take your life in an instant. It's building your body. Where will your will to live? And during this period, Sekimune continued to. Pain comparable to hell, make life worse than death. It can be said that every patient who dies from nuclear radiation, they all look at themselves. From a healthy and intact person, gradually become corrupt, the ragged walking dead. At the end of the last century, there was a Japanese man who was exposed to nuclear radiation. He endured 83 days of hell, looking at the body melt into greed. What dose of nuclear radiation is a normal human being exposed to? And lethal Bagley is lethal enough. And distance and radiation. The Japanese, who are only 60 centimeters, feel guilty. Receive 20 grays in an instant. Left and right radiation. Immortal? In nuclear radiation research, there's always been a theory that you die in the light. In layman's terms, that is, if you're exposed to radiation at the same time. I saw a faint blue light. Then you must die. Because that's not light. It's a neutron barrage of death. Ionization of radioactive material in the air. A lot of neutrons are ejected in an instant. It looks like a flash of blue light. Infinitesimal bullets pass through its surface. Almost broke Ganaju. Every cell in the body. From the moment Wanyo saw the light, he was already dead. This is the iron that the medical community has not been able to break. At that time, there was a 3-person net sedimentation tank, such as Oniju, filled with a full 16 kilograms of oil, flat beyond the specified safety threshold. It's equivalent to a miniature fusion reactor. After the accident, the Japanese government immediately issued an emergency order. Emergency evacuation of residents within 500 meters of the factory. Residents within 10 kilometers are not allowed to go out. The distance from the center of the accident, only 60 centimeters of big guilt. I have started to feel the pain. In order to preserve Japan as much as possible, faces in the international community, in order to accumulate and respond to related events, medical experience, the Japanese government in a very short period of time, and we brought together the best medical experts in the country. Airlift countless top medical apparatus. Do your best to cure the big guilt. During the next 83 days of treatment, everybody, you'll see a scene like hell. Big guilt will also suffer the most extreme pain in the world. Body dissolves. The first great guilt, the situation is relatively stable. Just the first to touch the radiator's right hand, it starts to get red and swollen, and began to turn black in just half a day. It was accompanied by constant pain, because I don't have any relevant experience. Doctors can only tentatively perform simple treatment, but it didn't have any effect. Red and swollen like the plague. Soon it expanded from the right hand to the whole body. On the third day of exposure to nuclear radiation, big guilt, the surface skin of the whole body starts to turn black. Fester. The story can only be medicated all over the body. But when you remove the bandage and change the medicine, and something absolutely terrifying happened. The story is told in private while being bandaged. It was torn off together with the skin of the inner moxibustion. The skin is sticking to the bandage. It seems that it does not belong to Daneju at all. It will peel off easily if you're not careful. Expose the flesh and blood of Daneju that has begun to fester. The reason why this infiltration occurs, it is because most of the inner wine, chromosomes of a cell, have been destroyed by nuclear radiation. This damaged cell cannot complete normal copying function at all. Necrotic cells continue to rot and fall off, but no new cells can block it. This is the most fundamental source of great guilt. In order to prolong Ouchi's life as much as possible, the panel decided implant healthy white blood cells into their bodies to maintain the functioning of the immune system. Otherwise, any bit of germ could kill him. But now the great guilt. He had lost all the optimism he had when he was in the hospital. He experienced the pain of foreskin all over his body, begging every day, ask the doctor and nurse to give yourself a good time. No more treatment. However, he had only been irradiated for a week at this time. For nearly 3 months thereafter, his pain will intensify, getting closer to hell. Like a journey. At the end of the last century, there was a Japanese man who was exposed to nuclear radiation, and the Japanese side, in order to study him, it made him go through 83 days of hell torture, a modern version of ad hoc execution. The 6th day after being censored, Uchiju was transferred to the intensive care unit. At this point, he can no longer see his family, wrapped in bandages. Bandage. Down below is the peeling skin and the festering blood. To minimize his pain, the story is to take a lot of medication every time the bandage is changed. But it's still a drop in the bucket when Asa is already 35 years old. But he still screams "Mom" every day in pain, hoping to go home and give up treatment. But in the ICU, the only person who could hear him was the doctor, and for valuable research data. Doctors won't let it die easily. And radiation 2 weeks later. Laryngeal moxibustion. The lungs begin to swell and accumulate water. Not only can I no longer vent my pain by shouting, I can only breathe with the help of machines. Starting from the loss of One's ability to occur. He can no longer speak to anyone, describe the pain. But doctors can still use muscles. The tendons on the face determine. His pain nerves are still working. 18 days after radiation. Finally some exciting news. Previously, healthy white blood cells transplanted into Daneju's body survived successfully. This will greatly restore the immune system. But this is for Daneju. It just prolongs the time in hell. Just 1 week later, these normal white blood cells begin mass necrosis. Expert speculation. This is due to the radiation from the body of Dao Uchiju. At this time, Uchiju himself is a radiator. Enough to show how much radiation he was exposed to. Day 27, the intestinal mucosa of the large inner wine, gastric mucosa, and a series of subcutaneous tissues begin to fester. As these areas continue to deteriorate, the nutrient absorption capacity of Danai wine is approaching zero. Severe dehydration occurs. Nutrient deficiency. The great guilt at this stage, like a rapidly decaying corpse, body surface and even eyeballs, are constantly seeping all kinds of liquids. Up to 10 kilograms of body fluids are lost every day. Family. Only through the skin ruins a dozen times a day. The transfusion basket maintains the quality of the great guilt. At this point, they all knew the final outcome. But you can't let it die for the sake of scientific data. 48 days after exposure to radiation. Big guilt. Almost all bodily functions have stopped functioning. No one knew if he would still feel pain. Now he has nothing to do with vegetative people. Difference. Uchi. Long-standing body organs are aware of the coming of the end. Began to burst into survival instincts. Desperate high-load operation. The heart beats every minute. High intensity above 220 jumps maintains blood transfusion function. Hang your last breath. Day 60. The heart of great guilt is overwhelmed. It stopped 3 times. Every time, it was saved by the power of the expert group. But the lack of blood supply caused by this stop jump. Severe brain damage. Day 61, the great guilt at this time, has become a living piece of rotten meat, losing all autonomy. 2 months of rescue. It's like an endless spiritual pool. The doctor fought from the beginning. There's no ability to save the life of great guilt. Just hanging his last breath. Drag the chest and don't let it die. Because he lives one more day. It can generate some valuable data. In the end, the great guilt in the critical bed completely turned into a pool of melted mud. The defeated blood and flesh are hanging loosely on the disintegrated skeleton. A thin layer of dark bloody skin, wrapping the beating heart of the previous generation. The whole scene seems to come from the ground. In the end, the doctors still let go of the line. On day 83, when Ouchie's heart stopped beating again, the experts did not choose first aid, ended the life of this poor man. 83 days of hell? Nobody knows. What kind of pain did the inner 9th floor suffer? So-called snacks are probably nothing more than that. Japanese experts are always looking for data. Disregard for humanity. There is no objection to the entanglement of the 9th world of One. Caused great pain. Is this correct? It's worth thinking about.